everyone, and back to our CRMO journey. So in May of this year, Noah was taken into Royal Aberdeen Children's Hospital as a day patient onto the surgical ward to undergo a bone biopsy of his jaw and a debridement, because the maxillofacial consultant and other paediatric consultants were thinking that Noah had Garrés Osteomyelitis of the lower left mandible. So he went into hospital and he was actually seen over the first day by quite a lot of specialists. So we saw a rheumatologist, we saw an immunologist, we saw I think an endocrinologist as well, and now the immunologist was actually a specialist for disease and infectious diseases, which you realistically have to have when you are diagnosed with a bacterial form of osteomyelitis, because obviously they know an awful lot about the drugs that are going to have to be used. So anyway, Noah's never been put out, none of my children have ever been put out, and it was quite a scary experience. He went down quite late. He was not eating for over 24 hours in the end, because everything was delayed, which didn't go down very well. But in the end he had his operation, and we were told before he came back up, because he had to have a PICC line put into his arm for his antibiotics, because initially they weren't sure whether it would be a very long course, so up to 3 months of antibiotics. And our wonderful surgeon came back, and she'd obviously been in there with his jaw, and he'd had the incision, thankfully, in his gum, and they hadn't had to remove a tooth, and it was like just so unbelievable where it was, so clean, so clear. But she did say that when she went in, his jaw, usually she would have to use a drill to take a part of the bone out of the jaw, but she was able to peel away the jawbone with a knife, a scalpel. So it just peeled away, which kind of explains to you the damage that had been done over quite a short period of time to the bone. So basically something was eating away at the bone. So obviously the bone biopsy was sent off, but she'd seen osteomyelitis before, bacterial osteomyelitis before in a patient, and she said it was presenting very similarly. So the antibiotics had to be started, and he was on a very, very high dose of antibiotics every 6 hours into his PICC line. And yep, that was pretty, it wasn't very nice. He was being woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And for the next few days his face was so swollen. But Noah is such a fighter and such a strong boy that he literally had 1 dose of paracetamol, and he ate within a few hours of being in, and I mean ate something. So it was pretty good, but we were in there for 10 days, which wasn't great, because as I've already mentioned before, Noah's got allergies, and he also has major anxieties about eating foods that isn't made by me or isn't made at home. So he wouldn't eat the hospital food. So we had all of that to deal with as well. There were lots of blood tests done, and also whilst he was in, he had his first full body MRI scan with I can't think what it's called, the colouring. So he had a full body MRI scan, and there was a bit of to and fro-ing because it was done after the operation was done. And the surgeon didn't like that because there was a lot going on here, and it could have been shown up from the surgery. So it was a pretty bad time for it to be seen, but it was there, they could see it. There was nothing else anywhere else in the body, because that was another thing that they were concerned about, that there was something else going on. See, you know, when you're sent to a hospital and your child is given a bone biopsy, one of the things that obviously was questionable about it was cancer, because they don't know what's going on. Thankfully, after 4 or 5 weeks of waiting for the bone biopsy, we found out that it wasn't that. But it also came back that there wasn't enough bacterial infection. They still thought it was that, but it wasn't showing high enough levels realistically. It was just showing what you would find in your mouth, which you do have bacteria in your mouth, it's normal. So we left the hospital after 10 days with a course of antibiotics, 6 weeks worth of oral antibiotics, and lots of blood tests to be done every few weeks to look at his liver and all the other functions that his body was doing. So that was our trip. It was not very nice, shall we say, and we all stayed in the hospital as well because we live so far away. But yeah, we left the hospital with a diagnosis of Garrés Osteomyelitis. Little did we know that that wasn't what it was, but that's where we're at. And the reason I'm explaining this is because I know so many people that are waiting for a diagnosis and they have the similar sort of thing happen. And I just want people to understand that it is a very difficult process. The diagnosis takes a long time, and actually ours didn't take that long, even though there was a lot of to-ing and fro-ing. So watch the next part to hear about the next part.